Okay, guys, today's goal, we are going to be using drawings, symbols, or equations to help us solve real-world problems that involve multiplicative comparisons. So multiplicative comparisons may sound like some crazy word to you guys, but really it's quite simple, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So we are given this example. And the example says that the students in Miss Carter's class brought in their school supplies for the year. They brought in paper and pencils, markers and crayons, glue, folders, and more. Sounds a lot like you guys. Help them figure out how many of each item they have. For each problem, you will show your thinking with numbers, sketches, or words. Then write an equation that represents your work. Okay, so an equation. An equation is when we have two different numbers, a symbol in between those numbers, and then we put an equal sign and whatever the answer is. So nothing hard. I'm going to show you where the multiplicative comparison comes in with this problem. So there are 32 students in Miss Carter's class. Each student brought in 2 glue sticks. How many glue sticks is that in all? Okay, so we have 32 students, right? And they each brought in 2 glue sticks. So if they each brought in 1 glue stick, I would know that they brought in 32. Well, they each brought in another glue stick, so that's another 32. But we can't just write that down. We've also got to figure out what the total is. So one way to figure that out is to know that we need to add these two. So 32 plus 32. So then we can do 2 plus 2, which we know equals 4, and 3 plus 3, which equals 6, but it's actually 30 plus 30, so that we know that's 60, so 64. Well, that's addition. That's not multiplication. When I was saying multiplicative comparison, we need to know that we're looking at multiply, okay? We're multiplying to get something. So our equation could look like something like, we know each student brought in, there are 32 of them, right? And they each brought in 2 glue sticks. So 32 times 2, which is basically what we did just up here. We did one group of 32 and one group of 32. What this is saying is, there are 2 groups of 32, okay? So 2 groups of 32, we've got 1 group of 32, 2 groups of 32. So we know that 32 times 2, and in this case, we may not know what it is, so we could put a box saying that we didn't know, or we could write that we do know that it's 64. So in terms of our equation for our multiplicative comparison, we would write this. So 32 times 2 equals something, okay? Because that's where we're getting into this thinking of using our symbols, okay? So going back to this, our symbols here is one way that we can do this, and we're using a box as our symbol. Well, then it says answer. Well, we figured out what the answer is. It's 64. But we got to remember 64 watts, because it even says labeled with correct units. So when we're figuring this out, the question asked us, how many glue sticks is that? So we would write 64 glue sticks. Okay, now it says, if each student brought in 2 glue sticks, there are blank times as many glue sticks as students in Miss Carter's classroom. Let's think about that. If each student brought in 2 glue sticks, okay, here's our multiplicative comparison even more so, because we're using there are blank times as many. So this times as many is when we're getting into our multiplicative comparison. Well, if there are 64 glue sticks and each student here brought in 2 glue sticks, how many more glue sticks are there than people? Well, we know that they brought in 64 glue sticks and there are 32 students, so we could take those two numbers out and we're left with 2 times as many, okay? The next question, it says, in Miss Carter's classroom, students sit in table groups. There are 4 students at each table. Each of the 4 students at table G brought in 8 markers. So let's think about how we could draw a picture here. So we have table G, okay? I represent that. And there are 4 students. So we have 1 student, 2 student, 3 students, 4 students, okay? And each student brought in 8 markers. So 4 students, 8 markers. So that means this student brought in 8, this student brought in 8, this student brought in 8, and this student brought in 8. So I know that I have 1, 2, 3, 4 groups of 8. So 4 groups of, remember, groups of refers to multiplication, of 8. Well, I could either use my multiplication chart and go 4 over to 8 and get 32. I could also use my hundreds chart and count groups of 8 and go, okay, 1 group of 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Or I could use 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8. Well, I know that 8 plus 8 is 16. So then I know that. And then I could do 16 plus 16 and get 32. So my equation would be my 4 times 8 equals something unknown to get it. Or I could write 4 times 8 equals 32. Well, now I got to put my answer, and we got our answer is 32, but 32 what's? What are we trying to answer? How many markers? So I'd write 32 markers. All right. This next question on the sheet says, if each of the 4 students at the table brought in 8 markers, there are how many times as many markers as students at the table? So, we got to think about here. We have 4 students, okay? And I want to know how many markers there are times the students, times as many as a student. So I know that there are 4 students, right? And there's a total of 32 markers, and it's asking me how many times as many. So I know I've got times something, but I know my answer is this. So I'm looking for this missing number here. So I know 4 times something is 32. Well, we just solved up here that's 8. So what that means is that there are 8 times as many markers as there are students at table G. All right, our last little bit. It says, study the number line puzzle. What do you notice? How can you figure out the numbers that are missing? All right, so let's start here. I can figure out 2 times 5. I got several different strategies. First of all, I can say that's 2 groups of 5, so I could do 5 plus 5, and I know that that's 10. I could have also used my hundreds chart or my multiplication chart to be like, okay, 2 times 5 is 10. So I know that this answer is 10. Okay, well, 3 times 5. Well, I just did 2 times 5. And that just means there's 1 extra group, so I could add 5 more. I could also count by 5s and go 5, 10, 15, and get that. I could also write it out as 5 plus 5 plus 5, or I could use my multiplication table and go 3 to 5 and get 15. Oh goodness, this one looks tricky. All right, something times 5 is 25. Okay, let's think about it. I could figure that out right? I could use this tool. So 5 times what equals 25? So it's not that. Nope, it's not times 2. It's not times 3. 4 times 5, well, that's 20, getting closer. 5 times 5, 25, because I would say that I started over here and I've got to go up to figure out what number it is, which is 5. So 5 times 5, I could also keep adding groups or skip counting as well. Okay. Oh, back to this one, 7 times 5. Okay, let's think here. I've got multiple strategies. You know what? I'm going to count by 5s in groups. So I've got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. All right, 35. All right, something times 5 is 40. Well, I could count another group up and see if that gets me to 35 from 7. I could also use my multiplication chart and go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. Okay, I got to 40. What number is that? That's an 8. Could have also just went 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. All right, I got a whole hand and 3 more, so 5 plus 3 is 8. I did it, guys. All right, so you guys are going to have some questions very similar to this today on your assignment. I'm going to show you what the worksheets look like. So here, these are just like the first couple problems that we did, okay? This is a challenge question, but I know you can do it. You can persevere through it. And we will get it going, guys, okay? This one is also very similar to it. And then this is kind of similar to our number line here. So here you're trying to complete the equation. So 7 times 8 equals something. This is saying 7 times what gets me 63. This one is saying something equals 4 times 8. I can flip this and think of it as 4 times 8 equals something. Okay? This one's saying something times 6 equals 30. I cannot wait to see your responses. You guys are going to do great. Bye!